Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast is your one-stop shop for fantasy football news and advice. Can't decide on who to draft on the first round? Going gaga on how to line up your team. Got you covered. Traditional leagues, Dynasty League, PPR League, IDP League, even Daily Fantasy Football League. Join us as we break down all the questions of fantasy football. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Fantasy Football Podcast.
What is going on, y'all? This is the GSMC Fantasy Football Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Austin. I am your host. I hope y'all are doing well today. I'm happy to be tuning in. Guys, we made it. Actually, I know I said yesterday that we made it, but we didn't make it yet yesterday. But now, today, we actually made it to day one in the NFL. Super excited. We actually got the Lions and the Chiefs down in Arrowhead in a 7-7 game right now. It's looking pretty exciting. Could end up being a shootout. Um, I'll definitely make sure I'm tuning back in, checking in on the score and fantasy. I know me personally, I need Sky Moore and Jerick McKinnon. McKinnon already caught a pass. Sky Moore did a little pretty jet sweep. So, you love to see it. You absolutely love to see it. Today, I'm just going to be breaking down four of the early games, my thoughts and my opinions, fantasy implications, things of that nature. I'm sure you guys already saw right here that we're going to be talking, or no, you didn't see it at all. We're going to be talking Carolina versus Atlanta first, over in down in Atlanta. Before we do though, please go ahead and like and subscribe. Tap in with the content if you guys like it. I'm personally going to be streaming 7 p.m. Every single Monday through Friday. Monday through Friday, I'll be here for an hour every day. So I'll be the one bringing you the content for sure. And I hope you guys enjoy it. So let's get started here with Bengals versus Browns. No. We're going to start Panthers versus Falcons. Not the sexiest game in the world by any means. Like I said, it is down in Atlanta. The over-under is at 41.5 currently. So we're looking at maybe like a 20-20 game from each team. Couple touchdowns scored. That's what the book says. I do like to check in on what the book says, FanDuel, just because Vegas, there was a stat. Vegas made $25 million off of sports betting. So I'm sure their statisticians are on their stuff. I'm sure they're tapped in, knowing exactly the projections and making sure that they're the ones making money and not the people who are betting on the sports, per usual, unfortunately. But looking at this Panthers Falcons game, man, let's bring up the graphic here. And this is not the graphic that we're looking for. Bring up the graphic. Panthers Falcons. This is from 1998. I just thought it was a cool little graphic to keep everybody invested. Fantasy implications. Okay, guys, the Panthers, obviously, in a general sense, they're looking better than last year. Some key additions. They picked up Adam Thielen, picked up Miles Sanders, and then they also drafted Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. Those are all big targets for their offense. I'm excited to see what they can do. Bryce Young, I already have him locked in for Rookie of the Year. Just seems like a bet that makes sense, in every aspect. I like to say that. I bet that makes sense because what really makes sense in this world anymore? Joking. Anyways, so Panthers right now they got three of their top three wide receivers are all questionable, being DJ Shark, Terrace Marshall, and Adam Thielen, all questionable. I know today DJ Shark and Adam Thielen both did not practice, and then Terrace Marshall's getting that limited practice tag, the LP on ESPN. If you see that, DNP means do not practice if you guys see that on the ESPN app. But what I'm most excited about for the Panthers, Miles Sanders, yes, Bryce Young, but the two of them together in the backfield, because we all know having a dynamic backfield changes everything for you. You can definitely go from being a team that obviously last year they had a ton of quarterback problems, running back problems even, just having Chuba Hubbard and who was their other guy? They had Deontay Foreman who was carrying the workload for them. He's a running back three somewhere, and somewhere being um, over in Chicago. So I really like those two together. Definitely think there could be some read option elusiveness. Obviously, Bryce Young's going to be running around the field. Um, Miles Sanders last year actually put up 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns, finished as running back 15 in fantasy in standard PPR leagues. 11 touchdowns, that's a whole lot. 1,200, and you still finish as the running back 15. It's because he has stones for hands, absolute stones. When he tries to catch the ball, it looks a little something like that. So they keep him out of the passing game. Obviously, Chuba Hubbard is going to be involved in the passing game. He'll be their third down back, and he's definitely a pretty talented, shifty guy. I enjoy watching him play. Um, Bryce Young, as I said, I already have him locked in for Rookie of the Year. Very talented quarterback. He literally drops buckets, or drops the ball in the bucket like Carmelo Anthony in his prime. In college, his last 2 years, which are the only 2 years that he played at all, 79 touchdowns in 27 games. I'm thinking that sooner rather than later, he'll translate that talent over here to the big leagues, the NFL. Um, Guys that I like on the Panthers fantasy wise, first would be Adam Thielen. He's a solid guy, 33 years old now, going into the long career as an undrafted guy. Really worked his way up. Last year, beating off that Justin Jefferson guy, 716 yards and six touchdowns. Still put up a solid season. Ended up getting a deal with the Panthers worth 3 years, $25 million. Um, that's hefty. They're definitely paying, to pay a 33-year-old 8 million over 3 years. His contract is structured a little bit differently to where he gets paid on the back half. Because I did look that up. But to be paying that guy, he's gonna get 5+ million when he's 35 years old. That's that's kind of crazy. You at least have to be willing to make that investment and know that his body is good. Obviously, these teams have the best doctors, and they're willing to make that investment, I guess. Then we got Jonathan Mingo. This guy is a beast, 6'2", 225 out of Ole Miss, 4.46 guy. Um, Saw him in the preseason. He looked solid. I would not be surprised if he quickly becomes their best target just because of his youth as well as his size and strength that he provides that the other guys in their locker room just don't really provide. Maybe DJ Shark. They did get DJ Shark, obviously. He's another like tall, fast guy. So we'll see who edges out that competition, who becomes the wide receiver one in Carolina. But fantasy wise, we're not looking at anything special, I don't think, until Bryce Young takes off. And maybe we'll see Mingo or Thielen end up in the top 30. But I'm not very high on the Panthers offense, unfortunately. And I probably do have them losing this game by a sizable margin to the Falcons. And that's because on the other side of the ball, they got a crazy two-headed monster in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Now, a lot of people are sleeping on Tyler Algier. He quietly just put up a very nice 1,000-yard season as a rookie. He does run behind PFF's number one graded offensive line currently, so that's something worth noting. Um, they always gonna have a rushing advantage, be able to get some push. A lot of people don't look at O-line. I'm one of the guys who is always, searching for where are the big guys at, the biggest guys on the field. They're making plays too, and it's weird. If you look on ESPN actually, and you look for these O linemen, they don't even track stats, like not even pancakes or I don't know what you would track, like a good block, good block. I don't know, but they do have the best offensive line. I'm sure, and I never want to like tell anybody what to, put their money on, but I think one of these guys absolutely gets in the end zone this week, being Tyler Algier, Bijan Robinson. We'll see if the Bijan Robinson hype is real. The time is now. I know a lot of you guys spent your earliest draft pick on him without really knowing who the guy was. Obviously, at Texas, he was a beast. Is he going to be a beast in the league? Will it translate? We will just have to see. Quarterback, they're going to go with Desmond Ritter, which is kind of crazy because he beat out Showtime Heineke, playoff Heineke, GOAT Heineke for that starting job, which really surprised me. Um, it really did, just because Heineke just seems to be a little bit more proven, but that means that they believe in him. And we'll see what Desmond Ritter brings to the table. Didn't have a great year last year, but was definitely serviceable when Mariota cried and walked out of the locker room because he lost his starting job. On ESPN, Falcons are getting about 65% to win this game, so I think it's a no-brainer to take the Falcons here. And fantasy-wise, the guy who I think is going to perform the best is either going to be Tyler Algier or Bijan Robinson. Obviously, still have Pitts, still have Drake London. Those guys really haven't shown me anything yet to warrant them getting a lot of attention. Pitts has had two just bad seasons. One, he was a rookie. Like, I get it. I usually give rookie tight ends, especially a pass if they have that bad year. But this year was no better, and he hasn't given me any reason to believe. Besides his incredible speed, running like a 4.4 at the tight end position, he has the tools. He just needs to put it all together at this point. Drake London, he is graded pretty high on PFF, but he's just not one of my favorite guys personally. Here we're gonna take a quick break because this did go a bit long. I'll try to shorten and make sure we hit all the other games, but I will be right back. Thank you. And we are back. Score in the Chiefs game, we still got 7-7. It's looking like Amon Ra is probably gonna have the best fantasy game out of everybody else here. He's not on any of my leagues, so it's kind of disappointing for me personally. But I'm ready to jump into the next game here, and one probably the game that's going to be the best in the early slate, if I had to guess, or probably the most watched. It's gonna get some stats, some statistics, um, for sure, television wise, and that is the Bengals Browns in Cleveland. Over under sitting at 47 and a half, and the Bengals are slight favorites away, which is kind of interesting. Um, obviously Deshaun Watson's back. Joe Burrow, the Joe Burrow Jamar Chase connection is there. It's the best connection, or I mean, I think it's probably the best connection without Kelsey being on the field with Mahomes. That connection has actually produced 2,500 yards and 22 touchdowns over the past 2 years that they've been together. That seems pretty efficient to me. 2,500 yards and 20 touchdowns in not that many games, less than 30 for sure, just because Chase was sidelined for a bit of the season last year. Um, Jamar Chase in those 12 games did go for 1,046 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's my favorite fantasy wide receiver. Actually, in another one of my leagues, I was able to pick him fourth somehow, and that's because somehow one of my friends wanted to draft Josh Jacobs with the number two pick. So that was just lovely. I'm all over that every single time. If someone of Jamar Chase's caliber is gonna fall to me at pick four, gonna swoop him up. In those 12 games that I was talking about, 134 targets, leading to an average of 11 targets per game. 134 divided by 12. That is quick maths. I think it's worth noting that Joe Burrow is the number one PFF ranked quarterback in efficiency. He was fifth in yards last year with 4,474 yards and second in touchdowns only to Patrick Mahomes with 35. Just a killer season. He has really got that dog in him, and I don't say that lightly. He his third down conversion rate, and I don't have the stat on his third down conversion rate, but when I'm sitting here watching, it's always looking like he's just locked in, not doing too much, not doing too much at all, just making a short, accurate, sweet throw, and I'm assuming that's why PFF has graded him the number one. If you have him on your fantasy team and you got that Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase stack, you're sitting pretty, at least for week one. Obviously, they're gonna sport Joe Mixon down in the running back spot. Worth noting that the Bengals offensive line is ranked 29th by PFF, so they definitely do not get as much push as we would like, and I'm sure as Joe Mixon would like, which is unfortunate for him. Browns are top 15 rush defense in the league, top half, so that's also worth noting. Good D line and then meh linebackers. They do not rank too well in tackling either. I think if Joe Mixon can just make a couple guys miss, get to the second level, make a linebacker miss real quick, which he's real good at doing, he could take one to the house for sure. In that explosive offense that we've just been talking about, we haven't even made it to a guy who's probably a top 10 receiver in the league, being T. Higgins. He had 109 targets last year as well. The leader in targets last year, Justin Jefferson, had, I believe, 184 targets. So, 80 less, but he's a wide receiver too. He's definitely getting work. He's doing a lot. And this week he might have a great matchup because Denzel Ward is banged up. He's questionable right now, going through concussion protocol, full of five-step concussion protocol. And obviously their number one, who at that point is Greg Newsome, is going to be lined up with Jamar Chase. I don't know if he'll chase him around the field and maybe they'll just stay balanced with their cornerback two and cornerback three. But that means T. Higgins going against a quarterback or cornerback one is usually a good matchup. Him going up against your cornerback three, that's going to be really bad for somebody, and somebody's going to get embarrassed. And I can't wait to see it. I absolutely can't wait to see it. I'm leaning with the Bengals here, with the best fantasy implications, best fantasy player being the Burrow Chase stack. Um, Possibly. Obviously, they got a big guy, Nick Chubb, who squats 1,000,000 pounds and probably deadlifts 1,000,000 pounds too. And we're gonna get to him right here. Nick Chubb ranked as the number two PFF running back and has the number two O line as well. This man put up 1,525 yards and 12 touchdowns at 26 years old. He's showing no signs of slowing down other than Derrick Henry, and it's kind of a shame just because Derrick Henry is so dominant that if Derrick Henry wasn't in the league, Nick Chubb would, he would get all the attention. He would be the guy that is the darling of the league that Derrick Henry actually is, but they both are just grown men, grown, strong, run you over, put a hand in your face mask and run you over type guys. So I definitely love to have them on my fantasy team, even though they don't get the PPR, which is a bit disappointing, but we live with it because the 12 touchdowns and the 1,500 yards. It just makes sense. 27 years old, until he's, reaching 30, 31, I think he's probably a safe pick, barring any injury. Obviously, they're going to be sporting Deshaun Watson out there at quarterback. Last year didn't have a great year, was ranked number 35 for PFF in quarterback efficiency, so that's not very good. Obviously, he came back halfway through the season, or a little bit more than halfway, and he wasn't allowed to even be with the team during his when he was serving his suspension. So I think that can maybe speak to why they weren't gelling and they weren't clicking and stuff like that. Um, let's just remember that Deshaun Watson's last full season with the Texans, this was in 2020. He led the league in yards with like 4,800 or something like that. It was a whole lot, and he was put on a show, and He's obviously like still got a lot left in the tank. Dude won a national championship. I know that he wants to continue his legacy, and he's not just content with this being how his name currently is, how it always is going to be. I maybe expect like a Tiger Woods type of comeback from Deshaun Watson. And I don't know if he'll ever be like the darling of the league unless he goes and gets a Super Bowl, but hopefully he can better his image. We'll see what happens. You just never know. Then we got Amari Cooper being his number one. If you want to stack those guys, I'm all about that. All about the quarterback one who you know is gonna throw a lot to his wide receiver one. Amari Cooper last year, he went 1,160 yards receiving. He was ranked the number one or number 15 PFF wide receiver, and he's definitely the number one wide receiver for the Browns. Um, so his only competition that he's gonna face for targets is DPJ Donovan Peoples-Jones out of Michigan, who's definitely an electric playmaker. So it's honestly great that they have a well-rounded offense that just, you can go here, it's not working, you can go there, and if that's not working, we can even go over here to DPJ, our electric playmaker, a guy who can do a lot of things for our team. So they're set up in a pretty decent position. I do think the Bengals are just a little bit more hungry here, possibly, just because they just keep getting so close. They just like get all the way to that game, and Joe Burrow just like can't get it done when it matters most. Not because he's not great or anything, but maybe the cards just aren't landing in his favor. We'll see what happens this year. I think they have a big season. I think they probably come out and have a statement game. We'll see what Deshaun Watson does. Um, I expect this to be more of a Nick Chubb game than anything, as well as a Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase game. Those being my top three guys in this one. And it's also worth noting that these are two bottom tier tackling defenses. They are both very bad at tackling, so we could definitely see a shootout here. Two guys that I can throw the ball to. But yeah, I want to move on to the Colts Jaguars game here. Over under sitting at 46 and a half in Indianapolis. Colts obviously are going to start Anthony Richardson. First game, he had a pretty solid preseason, and the coolest part is that they're projecting him to go for around 800 to 850 rush yards, and that's going to be exciting to see. He's definitely going to be running around the field, moving his feet. They're also projecting around 3,000 passing yards, which is going to be interesting. We'll see if he can actually get that done. He doesn't have too many weapons right now. Um, I like Pittman. He's good. Saw him haul in a couple passes during the preseason. I think maybe if you stack them, wouldn't be the worst. Obviously not the best, but I don't think people realize like the value of having that wide receiver one attached to your quarterback. Uh, let's also keep in mind that Anthony Richardson literally has 4.43 speed. He's going to be moving out there. If he gets a nice little seam, he's taking that thing to the crib for sure. No question about that. Let's move to the next. Um, all in all, the Colts are going through a bit of a dry spell right now with the Jonathan Taylor situation. They're, I think, projecting to start Evan Hull as their running back, and that just doesn't bode well for me personally. I didn't even move to the graphic. Sorry, guys. We're gonna move to this graphic. No big deal. One Trevor Lawrence, and we're about to talk about him. I think it's also worth noting that the Colts defense is pretty solid, so I think that's what's going to keep them in games until Anthony Richardson really starts clicking. If he's not running for 100 yards, I don't see how they win at least until Jonathan Taylor comes back. And even though we don't know his future, so from a fantasy perspective, I might like Michael Pittman and I might like a little bit of Anthony Richardson, but that's about it for the Colts. Now let's move on to the Jaguars. We got Doug Peterson, man. He's looking sweet in the visor right here. I think he's building something special over there, in Jacksonville. He's got the Clemson duo back there in the backfield with Trevor Lawrence and Travis Etienne. Obviously, they won a national championship together in 2019, and they are coming back to try to do it again, I guess, right? And the Jaguars are building a sweet wide receiving core. They got Calvin Ridley, they got Christian Kirk, and they got Zay Jones, all who they're paying, plus Evan Ingram, the pass catching tight end, who's revamped his whole career. He was really bad. I just remember always like trying to be like sleepy, sleepy, sleepy Evan Ingram. I'm trying to get sleepy Evan Ingram in my fantasy team, and he never panned out. And then obviously last year, I'm I'm like, Evan Ingram hasn't really shown me anything in his entire life. So I didn't go with him, and he pops off for 766 yards, had a couple touchdowns in there too. Personally, I think it's about time for Trevor Lawrence to really break out. He had a solid season, had a good season, lost a crucial game, absolutely choked a crucial game, if I'm remembering correctly, to the Colts that knocked them out of playoff contention when they were practically a lock. So I'm sure that's haunting his nightmares. There's no way he does not wake up in cold sweats thinking about that game when the Colts didn't have a starter and were awful. So he probably needs this win back in blood, or else he might be. If they lose this game, watch out. I don't think that he'll be okay for like the rest of the season. Oh, deep ball from Patrick Mahomes here to MVS. Wow. On 3rd and 17, just launches a straight rifle. That guy is really good. But continuing talking about the Jaguars, the team is deep. They got four solid pass catchers, and nobody's really got true eyes on Calvin Ridley yet. I'm excited to see how he does. Um, I'm sure he's going to be great. He was really good when he was still allowed to play in the league. I think it's ridiculous that people are suspending these players for gambling, especially when it's like they make that much money. They can't put, I don't know. It's kind of crazy, especially if they want to like gamble on something else. I don't get why they can't do that. I think there should be talks. FanDuel was literally came up on every single ad on my Instagram for like the past, I can't even tell you how long. FanDuel is my most, literally my most given ad. So if they can market to me like this, like why can't the players just bet some money? I don't know. But personally, I am definitely leaning with the Jaguars in this situation. It's kind of a no-brainer for me. Just seems like it makes sense. Trevor Lawrence has been having this game just like sit in his mind for months now, and there's no way he'll lose it, in my opinion, my personal opinion. Now, we're gonna take a quick break here, and then when I come back, we're gonna hit my favorite game, and I think which is gonna be the best game of the early window, and that's gonna be San Francisco versus Pittsburgh. We will be right back. Yes, sir, we are back. And I just thought I'd let you guys know that one of my parlays looks super live. So yeah, let's go for the Thursday night game. Just a little $10 guy and nothing crazy. Nothing crazy at all. But let's get into this game that probably will be the best game of at least the early window being the 49ers versus the Steelers. Before we get into the fantasy implications, these are two elite defenses with obviously very elite players. Fred Warner on the 49ers side, obviously they got great safeties. Charvarius Ward is over there as well. And then on the other side, we got the TJ Watt Minka Fitzpatrick duo doing damage. I would venture to say, and this is just like a bold prediction from me because I just like giving the bold predictions that the Pittsburgh Steelers defense will score the most points out of any other defense in the league this year. I think they have a legitimate chance to do that. They're pretty much loaded at every position, and even though their offense wasn't amazing last year, I think they will have the horses on defense, which is different from, a lot of other teams, like how they succeed to stick around in games and get the crucial stops, get the crucial third downs uh, that their team will need. And then, Kenny Pickett has been working on himself apparently. He said that he's watching more film than any other quarterback in the league. We'll see if that comes to fruition. Last year, it was not that good, but let's get into it. I do want to start with San Francisco's offense. It is explosive, to say the least. Very, very explosive. And let's just start with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy in 6 games last year, 6 games only, 13 touchdowns, 1,374 yards. Those are big boy numbers. And he just walked into the league as Mr. Irrelevant, last pick in the draft. A lot. I'm sure his teammates just literally can't say enough about this guy. He's a dog on and off the field, and he just gets it done in the locker room in literally every way. Um, he does lean on people like Ayuk, Kittle, and Christian McCaffrey, and I don't think it'd be too difficult for a standard quarterback that has got some moxie, some swagger that you see these guys who are top tier, S tier, top of the line guys at each position. He has weapons. He got Debo Samuel, who's extremely underrated. He'll even rush the ball sometimes. And definitely one of the best dual threats in the league. Christian McCaffrey, one of the best dual threats in the league. George Kittle, who I know is looking to protect him at all times when he's pass blocking, and then even when he's going out for a route, he's doing damage there too. George Kittle actually finished as tight end 3 last year. Debo Samuel had a bit of an off year and finished at wide receiver 37 by the end of the year, but he was struggling with injuries. I do have him bouncing back, and I'm drafting him in a lot of DFS leagues. I'll be looking at him for anytime touchdowns, all that type of stuff. Christian McCaffrey did finish at running back too, and to me, he's just the most talented guy in the league. Last year, 1,200 all-purpose yards and 10 touchdowns. It's just a standard day in the office for one Christian McCaffrey, straight out of Highlands Ranch, Colorado. Guy's, neighborhood hero. He's a problem. Uh, just going through some stats. Debo Samuel, 56 receptions, 632 yards, and 2 touchdowns last year. Plus, he did add 2 touchdowns in the rushing department. Kittle finishing as tight end, 60 receptions, 765 yards, and 11 touchdowns. And I think the 11 touchdowns are what allowed him to finish at such a high rank. Brandon Ayuk, 78 receptions, 1,015 yards, finished as wide receiver number 15, added a couple touchdowns there too. They just got weapons everywhere. I didn't even talk about Elijah Mitchell, and he's absolutely going to have an impact in the entire season for them. Let me just get some water real quick. Sorry. Yeah, I drafted Brandon Ayuk in my main league. I do believe in him, and he has been the number one target for Purdy, putting up the 1,000-yard season with Debo being down. I do expect Debo to climb up to that wide receiver 1 and probably touch the ball in the backfield even more as well. So I'm excited for him. On the other side of the ball, this was not a great offense last year. Uh, there's just no other way to say it. It just wasn't. They and this will explain a lot here. So Pickett in the games that he played, he only didn't play 3 games. They gave Mitchell Trubisky the chance to run around on the field, and he did a really bad job. So then, what happened to my lighting? Hold up, guys. We'll be right back in 1 second. Technical difficulties are amidst. It's okay. This is the last segment too, so we'll just finish it right here. But yeah, we're talking about Steelers. Steelers offense that didn't perform very well last year. They were not very good. Besides Najee Harris, I would say Najee Harris was their best player, going 272 carries for 1,034 yards. God, that's hard to say for some reason. And 7 touchdowns, adding on 41 receptions for 229 yards and 3 touchdowns. So he's definitely a PPR threat, just grabbing those 41 catches throughout the year. The reason what I was saying that they weren't that good, Kenny Pickett only missing 3 games when they're, letting Mitch Trubisky do his thing. Kenny Pickett only had 7 touchdowns in -3 15 games, 7 touchdowns in 15 games. That's not good. And as I was saying earlier in the show, apparently he's been watching all the film on all his incompletions and just like trying to find a way to get better. And I can definitely respect that. He is an arm talent. He is just like Teddy Two Gloves. He plays with the gloves on, and it's kind of interesting. Some people say that like changes how you can actually throw the ball. I know Peyton would throw with the glove on sometimes, so if Peyton did it, I can get down with it, I guess. Kind of makes sense, but he did put up 2,404 yards, also not very impressive in that amount of games. So we'll see if he can have a bounce back season. He did have the craziest college highlight that I think I've ever seen in my entire life with the fake slide and then took it to the house. This guy definitely has potential, so we'll see what happens. Quick update on the Chiefs game: 14-7 going into half, and the Chiefs will be receiving the ball in the second half. I want to talk about Deontay Johnson as well. He's a guy who was ninth in targets in the league, but somehow finished as wide receiver number 28. So they're trying to get him the ball. They're trying their hardest to find a way, any way to get Deontay Johnson the ball. The most surprising part of it all, 0 touchdowns for Deontay Johnson, being the ninth most targeted wide receiver in the league. That is crazy. Um, with that many targets, you would think that he would find a way to get in the end zone. I'm sure his luck will change this year, but I feel like we say these things, and the luck can't always change. But the targets are there. 86 receptions speaks for itself. They're trying to get him the ball. He most likely would be the number one receiver, but the guy that we're talking about next, George Pickens, who finished behind Deontay Johnson at wide receiver 39 last year, is coming onto the scene. Y'all know him as NFL young boy. He is a menace. He is a salve. He doesn't look like he gives a what about nothing. And I mean, besides football and catching the ball and making crazy catches, he probably cares about that, and he's good at doing that. Last year he went 52 catches, 801 yards, and 4 touchdowns. I definitely 100% expect him to do more than that. He's not going to regress by any means, and Pickett's definitely going to be looking for him. He's one of the most athletic guys on the field at all times. So please watch out for one George Pickens. But I just don't know in this game, week one, if any of these guys are going to be a factor because I think the 49ers defense might have a stranglehold. I can see this being a more low scoring game. Maybe Najee Harris gets in the end zone, but somehow I'm seeing this game as one of those, 13-7 or maybe like 15. I don't know about 15, probably some touchdowns. Maybe like 21-7 49ers, something like that. Um, the problem with the Steelers as well, no notable offensive moves that they made in the offseason. um, at all. And then talent wise, they are the most talented defense in the entire league. In my opinion, super loaded, as I was saying. So I think they'll keep them in some games. But I don't know if this is the fantasy offense that I would be looking to invest in if I were y'all. But possibly this could be the fantasy defense that you should be looking to invest in your league, for sure. That's gonna be all for me, folks. I appreciate y'all. If you stay till the end, go ahead and drop a tip or a donation if you like what we're doing. In the little sliding bar that you've been looking at on the bottom of the screen. Soon we're gonna hop into the Patreon, and I'm gonna have a couple more segments that I'll do for Patreon. It's just gonna be like a little 30-minute thing where I'm just talking about more specifics. And if you're looking to tune into that, you can click the link in our description and make sure you like and subscribe if you like what we're doing over here at GSMC. Make sure you check out the other podcasts, the baseball and the basketball podcasts, and I appreciate y'all. Thank you.